Diving into recent developments, there's been a striking shift in the regional dynamics. Only 3 days after an ultimatum was delivered by the Palestinian resistance, Trump publicly demanded that Israel stop bombing Gaza. It's a
Yep,
move that's shaking up the whole narrative.
right. That's a bold call to action. What's particularly interesting is how this demand intersects with both domestic and international pressures.
Exactly. It's like layers on a chessboard. Dimitri Laskaris, in his video, lays out this idea that the resistance accepted only select parts of Trump's so-called peace plan, rejecting the elements that might compromise their long-term leverage. Indeed.
So the Palestinian side is picking and choosing, huh? But doesn't that risk fragmenting their stance or, missing out on a full-fledged settlement?
Well, that's the inherent paradox, isn't it? They reject what feels like capitulation while accepting only what serves their strategy. It's a precarious balance, one that forces Trump's demand into a louder spotlight, essentially turning the tables on Israel.
Yeah.
That flip in dynamics is pretty striking.
And then you've got Trump's role, publicly demanding that Israel halt its airstrikes on Gaza. Do you see that as a genuine diplomatic intervention or more of a political maneuver?
It's like both, really. On one hand, making that demand serves as a signal to the international community that even a major power like the US can step onto the field against Israeli actions.
Right.
It pushes the envelope of accountability.
But then there's the argument that using public pressure might just add theatricality without actually, impacting decisions on the ground.
That's a fair critique. Public statements, they're double-edged swords. They rally domestic support, sure, but as you say, they can, be all show if not backed by real policy shifts. Dmitry suggests that this maneuver might be a calculated attempt to reconfigure how power is distributed in the region, kind of shaking up the status quo.
And what about the potential implications with Iran? Laskaris hints that this situation could be a prelude to a broader conflict involving Iran, right?
Yes, totally. Even though the immediate focus is on Gaza and Israel, the backdrop includes a growing tension that might pull Iran into the mix. It's like a domino effect. One bold move leading to higher stakes where regional players get intertwined. A high-stakes
Yeah.
maneuver indeed.
Now, while that argument is compelling, do you think it's a bit speculative to link Trump's demand directly to the potential of a war with Iran?
I get where you're coming from, and it's definitely a stretch to predict war on that scale solely from one statement. Yet, considering the historical interplay of moves and countermoves in the region, there's an element of caution here. One has to consider that such public pressure might be read as part of a larger strategic posture, one that might in turn provoke responses from other regional powers. It's a risky game for sure.
It's almost like each move is a calculated risk where even a slight misstep could escalate into something much more serious.
Exactly. And while the Palestinian resistance's selective acceptance of the peace plan might give them some instantaneous leverage, it also leaves them with unresolved vulnerabilities. That tension between accepting a tactical victory and safeguarding long-term objectives is what really fuels the criticism of their approach.
Right.
It's a tough balancing act.
And speaking of criticism, some might argue that Trump's public stance is more of a power play than a sincere call for peace. It seems he's positioning himself on a pedestal as a mediator, yet the actual effectiveness of such overt demands remains questionable.
I completely see that angle. There's a debate on whether public diplomacy like this is genuinely aimed at de-escalation or if it's simply strategic theater. Dimitri's breakdown seems to lean towards the idea that it's meant to expose contradictions in existing alliances, forcing both Israel and the resistance to re-examine their positions, a strategy that might
absolutely.
realign power structures.
But then, there's the risk that such theatrics, if not paired with meaningful negotiation, can further entrench the positions of both sides. It's like, firing shots in the dark.
That's a valid concern. When moves in diplomacy are as public and provocative as these, they can indeed backfire. It's almost like trying to steer a speeding car with one hand, risky and unpredictable, definitely precarious.
So, where does that leave us in terms of potential outcomes? Will this public demand actually force a re-evaluation of tactics by Israel, or could it just deepen the rift in an already volatile scenario?
Honestly, it's hard to know at this moment. On one side, it might compel Israel to reconsider its bombing strategy, especially under global scrutiny. But on the other hand, if the underlying issues aren't addressed, like the rejection of key elements of the peace plan by the resistant groups, it might just amplify tensions further,
Yeah,
leaving everyone even more polarized.
and as those tensions escalate, we might see not just isolated clashes, but a broader ripple effect across the region, potentially pulling in nations like Iran.
Right. And that's where the whole chain reaction begins. Every diplomatic move like this is interconnected. A public statement, a withheld concession, even the tone of the discourse, all add up to influence the next step in the geopolitical chess game. It all interweaves.
Exactly. It's fascinating and a bit frightening how quickly momentum can shift in such situations.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that these developments are happening in the midst of an already heated environment where every statement is magnified. The role of media and even platforms like YouTube plays into how these messages are received and amplified. The narrative can easily get lost or skewed.
That's a great point. Media framing can sometimes push these messages to be seen more as rallying cries rather than calls for genuine resolution.
Exactly. And that adds another layer of complexity. When you're dealing with live, rapidly evolving content, nuance can be easily sacrificed in favor of sound bites and viral moments, which
Yeah,
then feeds back
definitely.
into the political discourse.
I wonder how much room there really is for constructive dialogue amid all this bold public posturing.
It's a tough call. Constructive dialogue often happens behind closed doors, while public posturing is meant to serve a different purpose, usually to establish a dominant narrative or strategic advantage. So, while these bold moves might not lead directly to peace, they do serve to, well, force the conversation in new directions. It's a strategic recalibration, you might say.
Yet, as you mentioned earlier, there's always a risk that these recalibrations could, in fact, widen the divide instead of bridging it.
Right, which brings us back to the core challenge, finding a balance between assertive power plays and responsible diplomacy. It's a high wire act where the stakes are nothing less than regional stability and human lives.
Yeah,
That's
undeniably.
the challenge of our times.
And in the midst of all this, every statement, every demand is scrutinized to either validate or undermine the overarching power narratives, the kind that can quickly tip the scales toward conflict or peace.
Precisely. And that's why monitoring these developments is so critical. Each maneuver, like Trump's public call for an end to the bombing, isn't isolated. It's part of a larger unfolding story with wide-reaching implications.
Absolutely.
It's a puzzle with many moving parts.
So, if we're to take anything away, it's that the situation is as much about internal resistance strategies as it is about external pressures from global powers. And both are dangerously fluid right now.
Right. And while it's tempting to see these moves as a neat cause and effect chain, the reality is far more messy, like trying to untangle a knotted rope while it's still being pulled in different directions. It's a continuously evolving scenario.
With all of that in mind, it really becomes clear that every new development, every public demand is a signal, not just of political intent, but of the underlying tensions that persist. It's a wake-up call, really.
It sure is. And it's a reminder that these public statements, as dramatic as they might be, are part of a high-stakes game where the risks and rewards are, well, monumental.
Right on?
Nothing short of high drama on the global stage.
In the end, whether these moves lead to a shift in policy or only further complicate matters, they'll undoubtedly shape the dialogue and the destiny of this very volatile region.
Absolutely. And we'll have to keep a close watch as these narratives continue to unravel. Every public statement, every rejection of an offered plan adds another layer to the geopolitical story unfolding before us.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely. No doubt. It's a vivid reminder that in world affairs, every word and every demand carries immense weight and can tip the balance in unexpected ways.